One of the most commonly asked questions that I get is, Alex, how do I change my accent? Well, this is a really interesting question because everyone has a different accent depending on the background or the area where they've grown up, where they've been raised, the country they're from, or even the area of the country that they're from. Now, this is a common challenge for students to come to terms with: their accent, their pronunciation, the way that they say things. But before you decide that you want to change your accent, it's important to understand why you want to change your accent. So make sure you ask yourself that question. Why do I want to change my accent? Whether that is for a British accent like mine, or an American accent, or whatever accent it is that you would like to change into, or whatever accent it is that you would like to learn to use. So let's just think about a few questions to ask ourselves before starting to learn a new accent and new pronunciations. So like I said, ask yourself, why am I trying to change my accent? And why am I trying to improve my pronunciation? Perhaps you just love different accents in English. Maybe you are in love with the British accent. Maybe you enjoy how it sounds when a British person is talking. Maybe you love the American accent, and this is an accent that you would like to start to use. Being able to use different accents is incredibly rewarding. Or perhaps you feel like your accent is maybe too strong. You want to sound more neutral. You want your accent to be less present, less strong. In order to do this, you're going to need to focus on a few pronunciation tips to refine those specific sounds that make your accent sound so dominant. Now, I've had loads of students who have been able to refine their accent so they're easier to understand and so their pronunciation is improved. But the most important thing to understand here is identify the reason behind why you want to make these changes. Okay, so now we've talked about that, let's have a think. What accent would you like to start using? Maybe you love the British accent. Maybe it's the American accent. Maybe it's the Scottish accent, the Irish accent. Even within the UK, there are so many different accents. You've got the Bristolian accent. You've got the RP accent. You've got the Geordie accent, the Scouse accent. In Scotland, you've got the Glaswegian accent. There's so many different accents, even within the UK. If you go over to America, you have the Southern American accent, or you have the more Northern American states accent. So many more as well. So identify which accent it is that you would like to focus on adopting, and then you'll be able to tailor your study and your training and your practice to really refining this use of that accent. So first of all, pick which accent you would like to use. Maybe share your favorite accents in the comments below. I'd love to see which accents you like the most. Now, it's important to pick an accent that you genuinely love, not one that you just think is popular around the world. Pick one that you really, really like. Okay, so now let's start to talk about practical things and methods that you can do to start to improve the accent that you would like. Okay, so with lots of things in English, it's a mental game. You have to remember grammar rules. You'll remember new vocabulary. You'll remember phrases, expressions. But when it comes to pronunciation, it's kind of more of a physical thing, somewhat like learning a musical instrument. You need to learn the specific movements that you use in the mouth. For example, how the lips move, how your tongue moves, and using the different areas of your mouth to make those sounds. Because in some languages, there won't be the phrases or the sounds that you get in English. So there'll be new sounds that you need to learn. And this is incredibly important when you start to learn English and you want to improve your pronunciation and improve your accent, because those are going to be key to sounding natural and less forced. So it's all about muscle memory. So what you need to do is identify which sounds are very common or new in the accent that you would like to start learning or start using. And then regularly throughout the day, practice these sounds, practice these words that help you to get in the mindset of that accent. For example, for me, if I'm trying to speak in a Scottish accent, I'll have a few words that I'll use to get me into that accent. For example, I'll say, are you alright? Are you alright? Are you okay? I'll say this phrase and the sounds are very different and the movement's very different in my voice. So for example, in my normal RP accent, I'll say, are you okay? But in the Scottish accent, it's, are you okay? And it's a very different movement of the mouth. So work out which of those are different. You'll be able to find loads of information on the internet of the accent that you'd like to adopt and start practicing those sounds. Two very important things that deserve special attention is word stress and intonation. So the word stress will ensure that you're understood in what you're saying. So within a sentence, you'll stress certain words more so than others to get that point across. And this will be different depending on the accent. Also, your intonation, incredibly important with your pronunciation. So your intonation is how you're understood. It's how the emotion is behind the words that you're saying. And it's crucial for conveying that emotion. Now, the best way to improve this is through listening and copying. So if you decide which accent you want to pick, say you pick my accent and you want to start imitating and starting to use my accent when you're speaking English, listen to something that I say, pause, and then copy what I said and how I said it. The more practice you get at pausing and imitating what I've said, that's going to really help you to pick up the intonations and word stresses in my British accent. Okay? So for example, I could say, hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. You could then pause this and copy. Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. And keep doing this. Pause, copy the next part. Pause, copy the next part. And you can do this with anything. Maybe you're watching a Netflix movie that you enjoy. Pause, listen, and try to imitate and copy. Keep doing this, and that will really help you to practice listening and using that accent. Now, often you'll find that when you meet someone who's been learning English as a second language, the accent that they talk in will very much depend on the media that they've listened to when they've been learning English. So for example, lots of people in Scandinavian countries will talk English with a more American accent because they've learned the American version of the language. Perhaps also they've watched Disney Channel, Nickelodeon as they've been growing up. They've been watching American movies, American TV shows. They've been listening to that Americanized English, and therefore when they speak, they use the American pronunciations, the American intonations, and the American stresses. So they adopt the American accent, probably without even realizing it. However, you can change this accent to whatever you want by just immersing yourself in the accent that you desire to have. I've got friends from the Philippines who were raised in the UK, but since they've moved to the Philippines, they've been spending lots of time with Australian people. This has changed their accent, so now they have a more Australian accent when they're speaking English. Some people are more susceptible to this change of accent than others. It all depends how much you want to hold on to your accent or how much you want to learn a new accent. But if you're really keen to learn a new accent, then immerse yourself in that accent. Make sure that every radio station that you listen to has that accent. If you're listening to podcasts, they use the accent that you want to adopt. The movies that you're watching, they speak in that accent, and keep practicing and imitating the way they talk. These are the key tips that you can use to be able to really immerse yourself and start using that accent. Now, another thing that you can do to improve or start imitating an accent is to record yourself. Record yourself talking and then listen back to it. You'll be able to identify if it sounds more or less like the accent that you want to start to use. So record yourself perhaps reading something, trying to speak in that accent. Listen and see how you're doing. Okay, guys, that's it for this lesson. So key points to remember: identify why you're looking to change or improve your accent or pronunciation. Then pick an accent that you would like to start to use, and then immerse yourself in that accent. Ensure that you're practicing every day. Pause, listen, imitate, copy, and keep doing this. Immerse yourself, and soon you will get there. But please remember that your personal accent is your identity, is who you are, and you should not be ashamed with the accent that you have. So if you do want to change your accent, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Okay, I look forward to seeing you in our next video.